listening to the Literary Entrepreneur Podcast, Episode 4. Hello, welcome to this edition of the Literary Entrepreneur Podcast. I'm your host, Taor Moody, bringing you book marketing advice that attracts readers. Now, if you joined us on last week's podcast, we talked about how you can target readers, how you can find your target audience. Now, I thought I would do in this particular podcast, letting you know one of the best pieces of marketing advice that I have ever received. But after I finished recording that podcast, I thought to myself, you know what would be really nice is if I can bring on the person who gave me that advice, kind of do an interview with that person. So just to let you know, I contacted that person, and in a few weeks, I'm going to bring the person on the show. So I will share that best piece of marketing advice that I have received or ever received. And you're going to get to listen to the very first guest on the Literary Entrepreneur Podcast. Okay, so I'm really excited about my upcoming guests. So what I want to talk about this week was a blog post that I did recently on DIY with Ty. And I asked this question. So I'm going to ask you the question. Are you using an editorial calendar? And I'm speaking of the calendar you use to manage your book marketing. There's no doubt sharing and engaging consistently on social media increases your visibility. There's really great social media tools out there. I actually talk about a few of these in my book, The Literary Entrepreneur's Toolkit. Some of those tools are Hootsuite.com or BufferApp.com. Those are two of my favorites that I use a great deal when I'm sharing information or sharing blog posts or sharing this podcast. But you do want to be strategic about how you share on social media, because you don't want to be appearing like you're a salesperson or even worse, like you're a spammer. So you need to create a bit of balance with your book marketing, and probably the best way to do that is to create an editorial calendar. I would say that an editorial calendar is probably one of those must-have tools for any marketing plan, because it's going to guide you on how you approach marketing each day, each week, each month, even for the entire year. So some people may think, oh, well, that's overkill. Well, let me ask you something. What did you do today towards your book marketing? Did you tell anyone about your book today? Did you share where they can find your book? Did you have an excerpt somewhere that you can point them to read? Did you even remember that you have that on your website? Did you just do an interview on the radio? Maybe it was a blog talk radio or a podcast. When was the last time you did an interview on maybe a radio, or did you ever, or have you appeared on someone's blog? We would think most readers would post a review on Amazon or Goodreads after they've read our book. But oftentimes, I know I do, I'll get an email or an inbox, when I'm on Facebook, or someone may tweet me how much they liked my book. Has that happened to you? What did you do? Did you engage with the person? Did you ask for a review for your book? There's a lot of questions to ponder about this book marketing stuff. And I know you may have a 9-to-5, or you have family, or you run a business, or you're involved in a community activity, but somewhere in the midst of your busy life, if you want people to know about your book, you have to plan your book marketing. You can't go around saying how much you hate marketing. And, if you have the story to tell, you took the time to write it. Your publisher, and if you're an independent publisher, you took the time to invest in a book cover. I hope you took the time to invest in editing. So you have to take the time to plan out how to tell the world about your book. So you're like, well, that's hard to do. I can open up this calendar and I see Monday through Friday. I see it's January, February, March, but I really don't know what to put on the calendar. Well, that's where I hope that this podcast can help you out with. So what I want to do, I want to break down, in some steps. I love steps. If you ever follow me, I love to do the step by step. And I think it keeps things really simple. And when I'm talking to my clients, that's definitely my goal is I don't want you to become overwhelmed with book marketing, but I want you to plan out and think in steps. Okay? Now, I mentioned in an earlier podcast, and that would be episode 2, the 5 must-do book marketing tips. So if you haven't checked out that podcast, be sure to go back and check it out, because I believe tip number 1 that I said was to start early. So that means as soon as you know the release date, which should be at least 6 to 9 months out, you want to start planning then. Get out the calendar, write down the book release date, and plan backwards up until where you are now. So I'm hoping as I'm telling you this that your book release is not like the next day or not the next week. Okay? This may consist of online and offline activities. Okay? And if you don't have pen and paper, just make sure my website, DIYwithTy.com, these podcasts are right there on the homepage. So if you miss any of these things, you can definitely come back. You want to, for your step 1, consider content. The content that you want to put on your editorial calendar. An obvious one would be the book release date. You definitely want to circle it, highlight it, put it in red. But that book release date should be a part of the book marketing plan. It's the center of the book marketing plan. You're going to do a little bit of book marketing before and then some book marketing afterward. And then you want to kind of take a look at your calendar from January to December and consider your offline events. Some of those offline events will be book events or book festivals that are usually annual. You may have to travel to them or look into purchasing vending space or definitely, hotels if it's going to be more than a one-day event. So you definitely want to look and make sure you go to those vendor websites and check out those dates and make sure you mark those on your calendar. I like to look in terms of season or quarterly. So, what I want to do for the spring or what I want to go or do for the summer or even into the fall and winter. And I don't think a lot of authors do this. So I'm definitely giving you a piece of advice here that I know authors don't follow. But that's just to look at the calendar and pay attention to things like holidays. Pay attention to things like special events. Anything that can tie back into your book and the subjects or the topics or the themes that go on in your book. Is there something on the calendar that you can plan to do? And one of the examples that I use often is the month of October. And I don't know when you're listening to this podcast, but definitely you should know that there's a lot of things that go on in the month of October. It's Breast Cancer Awareness Month. And it's also Domestic Violence Awareness Month. Are those some things that you may deal with in your fictional novel? Or are those topics that you may write about in some form or fashion in your self-help nonfiction book? So you definitely, when you're looking at the calendar, you should also look at what special events, what themes are going on for a particular month that you might can tie in some book marketing for. I mentioned social media. Social media is probably going to be your number one factor that you can do a little bit of book marketing on every day in some form of fashion, whether it's interacting with someone on Facebook, whether you're posting a tweet, if you're on Google+, if you're inside some of the groups that are on LinkedIn or Facebook. There's so many places that you can be, and I do not advise you to try to be in all those places at one time because that's impossible. But definitely you should have, and if you haven't, you should lock down the places that you really are finding beneficial to you, that you're really finding readers that you can connect to. If you've been on Facebook for a while and you're really not happy with what's going on with your Facebook page, be willing to go jump over to Goodreads and try out something new. Don't just stay in the same spot complaining about, well, this isn't working for me. Change it up. Try something new. There's so much social media out there. There's so many ways to connect with readers, but you have to not all the time just listen to what the experts say. You have to really study, like I talked last week about knowing your own audience, studying your own audience and going where your audience is. A lot of ways you can virtually use social media to launch your book. I'm actually working on a webinar right now that I'm going to do in April. And I'm going to talk a lot about launching your book using a virtual event. That's something I've been doing for the past 5 years. I've done over 100 virtual book tours. I do lots and lots of Facebook chats. I'm starting to do Twitter chats more, getting into Google Hangout. There's some ways online where you can really spend time and launch your book. And really spend time promoting it. That's something you will want to put on a calendar. And you will want to plan ahead of time. Okay, so all of that was just step 1, and that was probably the biggest part, finding the content to put on your calendar. So let's jump to step 2. Step 2 is thinking about your timing. Do you know the recommended times for posting or engaging on your social media? Do you know the times that you need to be able to send out a press release or pitch to local TV or radio? Or is there a newspaper or magazine that you have your eyes on that you want to get their attention? Definitely you want to either write a press release or get with someone to write a press release for you. This may be a point where you want to contact a publicist to help you on your book marketing calendar. Figure out a good place to help you start pitching your book to media, or this may be something that you do yourselves. A quick tip about social media and timing. You definitely want to kind of look at some of the experts, what they say, but just realize that those are usually general times that they will give you to post on Facebook, or general times to post on Twitter or LinkedIn or Pinterest. You definitely want to study your audience and know when they're active. And a real quick tip I wanted to give you was, if you have, or you should have, or consider having a Facebook business page, that's the page that people will go to like it. And it's a free resource and has some really great tools on the backside if you haven't used it. That's Facebook Insights. So when you go back to Facebook, you want to go to the top of your Facebook page. There's a button that will say See Insights. When you go there, there's a very visual way of showing you how your posting is doing on Facebook. So you'll get a chance to see, which post was liked the most, which post received the most content or had the most reach. There's also some section on there where you can see what time your audience is actually on Facebook. And I'm focusing on this tip because Facebook is probably the one you're going to do most of your book marketing on. It's where most people are located. So definitely, if you have a Facebook business page, make sure you're paying attention to the Facebook Insights. It gives you a lot of information about your target audience, especially, those people who have chosen to like your page. And if you're interested to know how to set up a Facebook business page and how you can, keep it going, because once you set it up, you have to figure out, what kind of things do I post on it? I have a great chapter in the Literary Entrepreneur's Toolkit that's all about Facebook. So definitely, please check that out. Alright, so that was step 2. Now we're going to get to step 3. After I did these steps, I was thinking, maybe step 3 should have been step 1, but I'm like, no, this is good, because you need to know what you're going to put on the calendar before you choose the format. And what I mean by choosing the format is, some business owners and some bloggers, they create detailed editorial calendars with spreadsheets. In fact, if you go to DIYwithTy.com, I have on the show notes of Are You Using an Editorial Calendar, I have 4 links that you might want to check out. If you're one of those detailed people who like spreadsheets, these are great links to go to because they had some templates that you can download and fill in your own information. Now, for me, that's a little bit much. I do like to use spreadsheets for certain things, but my favorite tool to use for editorial calendar happens to be Google Calendar. So I like Google Calendar. I have been using it for years, and it's mainly because I can sync it to all my devices. So I can make a change on my computer and go back to my iPhone later, add some other things to it, and maybe while I'm on my iPad. It's just really easy for me to create calendars for each of my projects and change them wherever I'm at. So I really like that part about the Google Calendar. In fact, I've had some people ask me about that, so I may do a blog post in the future about that on DIYwithTy.com. There's definitely other calendar apps out there that you can download for pay or free to use. If you're old school, you can definitely go to Office Depot, Staples, or even Walmart to purchase a planner that you can write in. Or you just go to the dollar store and buy a calendar that goes on the wall or on your desk. You know, if you like that physical writing out your activities for the year or month or week on a calendar. I actually still do that myself. I keep up a dry erase board, and I also have a calendar that I like to write on occasion too. So sometimes, it's good to have electronics, and then sometimes it's good, just to be able to have the old school where you just write it out and you can see it on your wall. So those are 3 steps I gave you on how you can set up an editorial calendar and use it throughout the year. So step 1, as a recap, step 1 was consider content. Step 2 is think about timing. And step 3 is to choose the format that works for you as an editorial calendar. So I really do like to stay organized. I definitely encourage you, if you haven't already, to add an editorial calendar to your book marketing plan efforts. In fact, I have some free editorial calendars I created that you can download for free on DIYwithTy.com. I'm a Pinterest person, so I have a link to a Pinterest board that I started that you're also welcome to go and check out. Actually, every time I find a really good calendar, I will pin it to that board. So you're more than welcome to check out that Pinterest board as well if you're on Pinterest. Well, that's all I have for you today. So I hope after this podcast that you find no excuses not to find time to plan. Let me know if you're using an editorial calendar. I would love if you would leave comments or send me a tweet. You can follow and find me at Tyora Moody, TYORAMOODY. I will definitely, tweet you back. I'm going to end this broadcast by saying you're more than an author. You are a literary entrepreneur. Writing and marketing books is a business. Let's learn how to tell the world about your book together.